Hello, this is Blair Stanislao with the Happy Lion Center. Welcome to our podcast, Mystical and Infamous, where we have playful and easy conversations about anything mystical, getting to the heart of all things strange and weird. Join us in a bit of magical tomfoolery, spreading the alchemy of love and light. And now, we invite you to enjoy the show.
One of the things that I went there for was to speak at a conference called the Awakening Festival. And the theme of that whole festival was surrender. Okay. And that was my master lesson for this whole trip.
Awesome. So did you have experiences where you had to surrender?
I had no choice. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So for example,
so I had hired this gal to be my translator and to basically drive me around Turkey. And she was supposed to make the arrangements of places to stay and this, that, and the other. Well, this young lady believes in following the energy. We're going to follow the energy. And had no comprehension of being on time or schedules or any of that stuff. And I'm very OCD about that kind of thing. And I had a choice. I could either surrender into it or not.
Yeah, and fight it.
And get really, really stressed. And the other piece of it besides surrender was about boundaries. She shows up with her friend. And, and I'm supposed to cover this gal's expenses on all these little things. Yeah. And so I had an extra body to deal with that I wasn't planning on. And the friend was sick.
Oh. Really
sick with this really nasty, croupy sounding cough, which I now have. So the girl I'd hired got it about halfway through the trip. And then luckily I didn't get it until after I got home. So that was all good. That was a very much blessing. But I learned a lot from the surrender piece of it, and I don't know, maybe I've got a T-shirt now that says I surrendered. Yeah. Because the most amazing part of this trip happened in a town called Konya. Konya is the town where Rumi lived and died and taught and all that kind of stuff. And so that was like the fourth stop on the trip was to go to Konya. I really wanted to go to Cappadocia, but there wasn't enough time. And I was excited about going to Konya. It hadn't been my first thought for sure, because I didn't know about it. But that's where the whirling dervishes are.
Okay.
And so I really wanted to see them because I thought that would be fascinating. So I was like, okay, I'm in. We'll go to Konya. So we get to Konya, and there were like 4 people in the car, me and 3 others. And they're talking about, we're going to go to Mevana. We've got to go to Mevana. And I didn't know what Mevana was. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So we go to Mevana. Well, Mevana is Rumi's name. Rumi's his last name.
Okay.
Mevana was his first name, which actually means teacher. And went to his tomb. And it was a really nice mosque-y kind of place, very Arabic kind of whatever. And I went in there and my channel just blew wide open when I walked in there. But there were no messages for me. The messages were for the other people in this group. And, so I'm like checked in. Am I supposed to tell him this? Oh yeah, you better tell him, So I did, and that was all fine and good. And we left there, and the next place they took me was to another tomb, which was Rumi's teacher, Shem's, that I'd never even heard of. And go back up about 20 years. About 20 years ago, I bought this book called The Illuminated Rumi.
Okay.
Never opened it. It was a very pretty book with lots of pictures and Rumi's poems in it, sitting on my shelf. Because it was part of this metaphysical book club thing, where you get like 5 extra books if you join up and you get a book, you buy a book a month, that kind of deal.
Okay.
So that was one of my extra books. And so I drug it out before I went there to kind of like see what Rumi was all about, because I knew that we were going to go to this town, Konya. And I read a few of the poems, and they were all about this real existential crisis that I was going through, probably the last time, who the heck am I and why am I here and all that kind of stuff. And these Rumi poems really spoke into that. And I thought, oh, this is very, very interesting. So we go to this place of his teacher, Shem's, and they all want to meditate and sit on the Om Kumbaya on the floor and whatever. And I'm in there, I get nothing at all. And I'm sitting there for a while. I got really uncomfortable. And I thought, yeah, I just said, y'all continue on with what you're doing. I'm just going to go outside. So I stepped outside, and I'm standing on the sidewalk. And all of a sudden, my heart flew wide open. My channel flew open again. And Rumi started talking to me. And he basically said that I was his beloved partner and that he'd been waiting for me and that I had to come to Turkey to be there and be in this energy. And now he'll be able to find me on the earth plane. I guess he had to find my energetic signature or something like that, you know. And I'm like, what? So, okay. So we go check into a hotel that we had no reservation for, but luckily there was a space for us, and because this girl had not done her job. And you know, and I was exhausted. So next morning we all met at breakfast. I said, so, okay, what is the plan for today? Because I thought we were going to Izmir that day. No, we need to stay in Konya another day. And I'm like, okay, why? Well, we got to go back to Mevana. And I'm like, wait a minute. I already saw that, been there, done it, got the t-shirt. What? No, we have to go. So we go back to this place again. And I'm like, okay, if y'all need to go in there, fine, knock yourself out. I'm going to go in this little coffee shop and I'm going to get myself Turkish coffee and I'll wait for you here. And when you come back, you know, we can continue on our little journey. And I let him go. And I sat down with my Turkish coffee, and no sooner than I did, my channel opened up again and Rumi started talking to me, and he dictated a poem that I will read to you. Here it is. I shelter you from storms. I wrap you in my arms of love. I have chosen you. Forever and in all dimensions we are one. I am in the wind and I embrace you. You shiver like the leaves on the trees as you feel my love. Let go and empty yourself into me. 1,000 years or only one moment, it matters not. You are ageless, you are timeless.
Beautiful.
It was. And I just, you know, I was crying and I was like, I've never felt that level of love on the earth plane in this lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, if I never meet him, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I certainly hope I do meet whoever this is. But so about that time, all of these people come back and they get their little Turkish coffees, and I'm explaining to them what had happened, and all hell broke loose outside. It was like fighter jets buzzing this mosque. And I thought we were being attacked. I didn't know what was happening. It scared the daylights out of me. It was really loud. Plug my ears. The windows are shaking, and everybody's going outside, and they're like, you know, looking at the sky in awe. So I went out there too, and it's 2 fighter jets, and they're like doing flybys, and they're doing barrel rolls, and then they come back the other way, and they're doing more barrel rolls. Then they go straight up in the sky, and they flip over backwards, and
it's kind of like the Blue Angels.
Exactly like the Blue Angels.
Okay.
And then they turned on their little things that make the smoke, and they put hearts all over the sky.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is for me. Well, come to find out, there was an air show going on. And it was like the 732nd anniversary of when Rumi actually moved to Konya.
Oh. So my question is, did your guide, did she know that?
No. She had no clue. She had no clue.
But she had a sense. So she was one of us, right? Following the trails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so bless her heart. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
That was the highlight of my trip. I mean, the
Yeah,
rest of it was,
unplanned excursion
uh-huh,
somewhere. Yeah.
yeah, totally. So, it was all about surrender. And more than surrender, it was about surrendering into love. And I guess the takeaway message from the whole trip was that that's the bottom line for
Hmm.
anything or everything. It's about surrendering into love and allowing that vibration of love to fix, heal, control, whatever
Hmm.
um, the situation is. Um, because otherwise we just have this ability and propensity to muck it up.
Yeah, the mind. Um, so let me ask you that from the mind here, I'm going to ask,
Okay.
uh, I would say the story you just told does show that there's a level of discomfort in that surrender. I mean,
Mhm.
that's pretty common. I think people can understand that. But my question is, did you feel like something had shifted after the air show about trusting your guide that seemed so ill prepared, but yet brought you to this place?
Yeah, so yes and no. Yes, up to that point, and no, because that whole level of unplanning
Uh-huh.
really kind of got us into some trouble.
Oh, okay. Other kinds of situations. Yeah.
Yeah, the next night we didn't make it to our hotel till 2 o'clock in the morning,
Oh, goodness. Okay.
and it was a dump.
Yeah.
And the night after that, we didn't make it to our hotel until after midnight. And I'm an early bird. I'm in bed by 9 o'clock, and I need a good 9 hours of sleep
Yeah. Yeah.
every night to be
So, like a
somewhat.
balance of
Yeah,
surrender and then also kind of being here, even just
mhm,
mentally.
yeah.
Yeah. I
So,
think I think a lot of people struggle with that. We just had that conversation earlier this morning in our meditation group. There's somebody who she's verbalizing it. I'm experiencing the same thing too. I'm just not verbalizing it the same way. But it's this so she's really, really excellent at muscle testing. Like
mhm.
matter of fact, when you came to the group and taught us your method, I thought, oh, I need to show this to this friend of mine and she will love it. But then she was actually going through a stage where essentially her guides were telling her, you need to slow down, you need to stop, because she's really, really smart. And
Uh-huh.
so she, does really well with pretty much everything, but not the letting go, not the surrender, you know? So, but that works for the most part, it works for the 3D world, works for our brains, like
Right.
it's here, right? But so she's trying to merge those two things, the spirit world and that. And so her guides had told her in no uncertain terms, repeatedly over and over, chill out with this. You're being way too mental about this. This is a tool for you to get information, to see that you're already getting it, but chill out. And part of the reason they were telling that is because she has a tendency to be really um, high strung is a way to describe it. I don't think that's an accurate term. Basically, her nervous system gets a little frazzled. She's very quick, right? Okay. So that was the message. And so she was experiencing that at the time. And I thought, you know what, I'm not even going to tell her what your work is, because I didn't want her to use it as another method to go through and do the same process. And she's at the same place again. And she was like, we're going to do a live event in June 6th, I think. And the idea is that we're just going to channel. We're going to get information for whoever shows up. If they ask questions, we're just going to channel the answer. We'll give a group healing, that kind of thing. And she's part of it. So she's going to be part of this. And I'm sure she's got her own set of anxiety or things around that experience that she's never done before, right? And so that's kind of coming up. And so she told me today, which we've talked about this for a couple of weeks, but she told me today that her guides are doing the same thing. They said, you're using this too much. You need to calm down. You need to let it go. And so she's talking to us about it. And she's saying, I'm letting it go. That's what I'm doing all the time, which is funny because, if you're letting it go, you're not thinking about letting it go, right? That's
Right.
not actual surrender. Um, but it's the same thing. And it's a very discomforting when you're used to kind of controlling or being aware of the universe or the world that you're in. And then just to let it go and just see what happens can be a very, very scary thing. Um,
Totally.
yeah.
Well, you brought up something for me with this conversation
Mhm.
about maybe one of the first times that the universe presented this to me about surrendering had to do with muscle testing.
Oh, did it? Oh, yeah. I think you told me that, but say it again. I love that story.
I got so addicted to it
Hmm.
that I was muscle testing everything.
That's what my friend does. Like she's always in
And
the corner doing that.
and what I realized eventually, and it took me like 3 or 4 years to break the addiction to it. It
Hmm.
was, I mean, it was right up there, I'm sure, with like a drug addiction,
Hmm.
uh, because it was just, and it hooks you really fast,
Hmm.
you
Oh, it's
know,
amazing.
because you get really good answers. All of a sudden, you think you've got the world by the string, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
and oh yeah. But the thing is that what I learned was that if you have to ask the question, show me yes, show me no, and if you have to ask the question, you're not in certainty, and certainty is also in surrender. It's that trusting that the universe has your back.
Hmm.
And so if you're having to ask the questions, then you
Yep.
don't trust it.
Right. Yeah.
You're in doubt, and you can't create when you're in doubt.
I think that's
And that was a
actually,
huge for me.
yeah, I think that's actually why I kind of struggle with muscle testing. I don't struggle with muscle testing per se. I struggle with certain kinds, like the finger thing. That doesn't work very well for me because my head, you know how in your mind you can actually have a couple conversations at one time? And
Uh-huh.
so if I'm doing that and I'm asking the questions, if I'm asking the questions, while I'm asking the questions, I'm thinking, okay, am I holding on? Am I doing it too tight? Am I, asking myself if I'm doing all this stuff wrong? Whereas if I do the sway test, so if I stand up, I can do
Mhm.
that. But for me, it's slow. Like to me, it's like, boy, that takes a really long time. I have to maintain my focus on this question and I make sure I do that. Now, not that I can't do it, but what I found is through the other practices that I've done, I can actually just sense the energy. What I get is that it feels like the sway test and that it feels like a push in one direction. So I still have to do the checking. So I still have to say, here's this question. I know the answer is yes. Where does that push me? Right. So
Yeah.
it's the same process. It's just not a physical thing. Like I,
Yeah.
I don't do as well with the fingers and so forth, but um,
No, I
yeah,
completely get that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know. I had heard of muscle testing, but I never think much about it. But it wasn't until I went and had somebody do. It's called a neuro. What is it? No, so this one's called nutritional response testing, and I
Hmm.
was desperate. Like I'm going to get off all this Western medicine, and I'm going to do this a different way. Well, these were the people that I was led to, and so I went and did this. And I have to tell you that, and I didn't have an opinion about it at all other than it has something else has to work, and I'm hoping this is it because I know that the other way is not working for me. So, but I just did whatever they said. You just get on a table, a massage table, and you put your arm up in the air, and they do the muscle testing. And of course, I have spent many, many times thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm not holding my arm like I'm supposed to do, or maybe I'm not giving the right resistance, or whatever. But when it's like really strong, it's like, okay, there's no doubting. Obviously, whatever you just put on my stomach, that's good for me, or this makes me really weak or whatever.
Yeah.
So over time, I've come to realize that it's well beyond any sort of questioning kind of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, so a surrender just to even get the information.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you think, or what do you think has been at this point, you haven't been back that long, but what do you think has been the most beneficial for you in that practice recently here of surrender?
Um, it's almost like I finally got the gold star on it, the one that I've been like, wait, made it to any kind of mastery of surrender. And I still got more grades to go through in it, I'm sure. But I think that there was enough of it in my face over the last 2 weeks. And I did it without losing my cool, without getting angry or upset. I really kept my power. and I spoke my truth.
Mm-hmm.
And, I said, okay, these are the things that I have to have from this moment forward. I
Mm-hmm.
need to have a hotel reservation that I know I can get to. I need to be in bed by 10 o'clock at the latest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and these are the things that I require. And this is what I'm paying you for, and that kind of thing. So it pulled me out of my comfort zone because I don't like confrontation, and I've had this tendency to just kind of like roll with it,
Mm-hmm.
but that way's not how I roll.
Yeah.
And so I really kind of had to lay some law down. And, by the time that I got to the airport to fly home, I realized that, okay, I survived this and I did it in surrender, because I did allow let's go with the energy, to,
Mm-hmm.
to rule a lot of it. And I didn't die.
Yeah, but it gave you more clarity. This kind of echoes something I was just talking about, which is this idea of being in the feminine energy. So being receptive, right? Like muscle testing is that way, right? Like we're trying to figure out what's coming in. But leading from that instead of leading from the masculine. And then we were actually touching on some ideas from Bashar. So the idea that you follow your bliss, you follow it to the best of your ability. And then that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're only going to have the best experiences, right? You're still going to have what Abraham Hicks calls contrast, right? You're still going to have a situation where, like yours, I don't want to not have a hotel room. Like that's not okay.
Yeah,
But again, seeing that again from the light of, okay, this is meant to teach me something. What do I do with this? And a lot of times it's just that gentle clarity where it's like, I can be okay with the open receptivity, but I'm not okay with, for whatever reason, whatever it is. For you it was the hotel.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, in a way, to me, it just feels like getting to know yourself even more.
totally,
Yeah,
totally. Good point.
yeah, yeah. Because every time I come into that kind of situation, I'm asking myself, well, what am I supposed to get from that? Like, what am I supposed to understand? Actually, this morning, my daughter had surgery. She's at home. The doctor told her she can go back to school when she feels like it, but she needs to keep her foot up for 2 weeks. Well, that's a long time.
Yeah,
And,
right.
and it's also not very realistic to think that you can go to school. She has a school that's, I think it's 3 stories high, which they have an elevator. That's not an issue, but it's difficult to walk around with crutches anywhere, let alone at school. And schools are filthy, not
Yeah,
because this one's particularly dirty. They're just dirty. People are dirty. And, anyways, my husband doesn't think that she needs to stay home because she's feeling good. Like she's not even on a whole lot of pain medicine, but she just really doesn't want to go to school for whatever reason. She's not even 15 yet, so it doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. But he kind of got irritated at me because I was kind of allowing this. Well, I mean, to be fair, I was raised by a teacher. I was a teacher. I kind of know how the system works. I do understand where she's coming from. I understand where he's coming from too, right? But it turned into this argument, not really an argument, but it was like this heated discussion. And it kind of like brought up, I don't know,
yep,
he asked me a question. I tried to answer it. And then he turned it into whatever concoction it was that he thought was what I said, which is not what I said. Right. And so I have to ask myself, well,
right.
what is it about that whole interaction that actually bothers me? It's not the disagreement about whether she should go to school or not. It's really like, okay, well, you asked me a question and you didn't actually listen. Like you're not hearing what I'm saying.
Hmm.
So it's kind of navigating into that where what is it that's actually, but which is the Bashar formula, right? Like, what is it that's bothering me about this? What are my beliefs that are keeping myself there? And how do we shift that?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
totally, totally. And the answer? Surrender.
It is. And I find it really funny that, like, okay, when we actually surrender, usually when we're really pushed into a corner, like, I mean, I can say from my experience, I've seen with other people too, and that's not the only way, but I think when we first get into this,
Mhm.
we have we have this facade of a belief that we can control things. And it's not that we don't have an influence on it, but we don't control everything. Um, and so this belief that we can control things makes us feel safer. So when it goes out of control, meaning it's not what we think it should be, and now we have to get into this place of, oh, now I have to feel this feeling that I didn't like, that I was trying to avoid by controlling this. situation, then it's what, like, well, then what do you do? What are you doing with that information? Oh, a lot of people skip over what the feeling is, why you are feeling that way, or why does that cause a problem for you? And they go straight to, oh, well, this is the reason it's logically a problem in the world, when it's really not a problem, because if you have somebody of an entirely different perspective, they don't even care. Like, it's like nothing
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
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 And so I had to speak at this event. It was called the Awakening Festival.
Yeah.
And I was one of the speakers, and I didn't have anything prepared.
Oh,
I just showed up and started talking, and I don't remember much of anything that I said. I can't wait to get the tape from it so that I can see what it was I said. But as you're talking, I'm remembering that some of this is some of the stuff that I was expounding on to these people in the audience about surrender. And it really has to do with, we start getting programmed into unsurrender from the moment we're born.
mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's quote unquote for our own good, but I mean, some of the first things that a baby learns, well, one of the first words the baby learns is no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Probably the strongest word.
exactly. And so we begin to formulate all of these belief systems and paradigms around no and can't do it, can't be it, can't have it, all this stuff that begins to shape our reality. And the truth is that when we really want to get to that place of joy or that place of love, we've got to strip away all of those things and get back to the empty shell.
Mm-hmm. Which is open,
Yeah,
non-judgmental, and doesn't have an expectation,
exactly.
which is channeling, right? Like, obviously you
Yeah,
were channeling when you were there, right? That's the experience of channeling.
yeah,
Being
totally.
open, allowing to have come. But it's funny. I'm sure you experience this too. I think unless you're a trans channel, I think there's a part of you that's still there, right? You're
Mhm.
still talking,
Yeah.
you're awake. Um, and I find for me, sometimes I think I actually have trans channeled a couple times, but regardless of those two instances, I would say I can actually have a conversation sometimes with that information. Just like you had mentioned, okay, am I really supposed to share this? Oh, yes, you're supposed to share this, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like a turning around and communicating with it, whether that's outside of you or it's internal. Um, it's but it's just being open to whatever that is, and then allowing that to come through.
Totally. Totally. And part of the reason I think why I have this Turkish connection, it's a cultural and a religious sort of implant that I'm here to deal with in this lifetime, I think. Even though I'm not from there and I don't have the same belief systems that they have, I've still got the thing,
Oh, so you're saying you would say that you share something belief system wise with the Turkish culture.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that I need to heal, obviously.
Well, what do
And
you think that is? Are you aware of what it is yet?
oh yeah.
Okay.
So it's all about having so many belief systems about reality, life, God, you name it,
Hmm.
um, that you forget what all that stuff really is,
Yeah.
and so we teach what we need to learn. And
Hmm.
so therefore I'm teaching these people that you can't put reality or God in a box, because as soon as you do that, pretty soon you're going to realize that there's more outside that box, and you have to expand the size of the box to include that. And as soon as you do that, you're going to find more outside that box, and you got to expand it again, and the more I do that, and I look at it and I try to talk about it, the more I begin to realize how much I've done that for myself.
Kept yourself in a box, you mean?
Yeah, with
Yeah.
my thoughts and my
Hmm.
belief systems and my
Hmm.
paradigms and things that I think are true.
Hmm.
And the truth is, none of us really knows what's true.
Hmm.
you know. And so I'm just wasting my time and my energy by trying to build this ball of what's true.
Mm-hmm. But here's my question. As I
Because it
just had
doesn't
a
matter.
conversation with my daughter, here's the question. And I just told her this. We were talking about being wrong or being right or something like really speak about being wrong. Okay. And one instance she said, but that's wrong. And I was like, because I can see in this particular situation, I can see both sides, right? And I'm like, I don't know that it's wrong, but I don't think you're wrong either, right? And then she goes on to describe something else. But objectively, this is not right. Yes, it is if you can prove it as a fact, because that's what we teach kids. What's the difference between a fact and opinion, right? But if we're on the metaphysical plane talking about what's, quote, right or wrong, what we're talking about is some sort of value that we have given something that we determine this is the thing that I want, so therefore it's right. And this is the thing that I don't want, so therefore it's wrong. But it's not objectively, not that there is any objective situation, but really there is no right or wrong per se. There's difference, which is that contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to keep moving towards the joy. Because
Yeah.
a very wise friend of mine once said to me when I was really on a high horse, well, Jean, would you rather be right or happy?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, oops. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's a big one for a lot of people I know. I mean, I remember dating somebody who it wasn't that long. It was too long, but it wasn't objectively like looking at your life. It's not that long. This person definitely wanted to argue to be right. It didn't matter what he said or didn't say. He talked faster than other people. He was bigger than other people. He was taller than them, and I kind of watched it because I was like, wow, look at you. That's interesting. You talk really fast. And this other person, like I would observe him with other people. This other person can't get a word in edgewise just because you're talking so fast. But
Yeah.
that doesn't really make what you're saying
Right.
objectively true or correct, right? And then as
Yeah.
I started to really listen to what he was saying, I realized he didn't even care if what he was saying was true. He just wanted to be right. He wanted to feel right. Yeah, I don't even know that he really wanted to, I don't think his intention really was to push somebody else down. Maybe there was some of that, but he really genuinely wanted to feel right. So he felt that helped. And that was just happened to be his physical circumstance.
Yeah.
But
Sure, I dated the same guy.
yeah, I think there's a lot of people like that. Yeah. That didn't last very long. And it really,
Yeah.
honestly, it lasted until we had an argument. And,
Right.
you recognize, yeah, that's not going to work for me. And it's kind of funny. My daughter kind of jokes about this too. It's like, so I played sports, right? I like playing sports, but I like playing. Okay. That was the thing I had in college when our coach sometimes took it really too seriously. Okay. And it was like, I don't know if she meant to make us feel bad. I think she was intending on that. Maybe like that was a motivation or something. But some of it, like I didn't feel bad because I always did my best. So like whatever, I'm sorry. Like I don't really like the way you're talking to us, but I didn't do it intentionally, and it doesn't make any logical sense to think somebody else did it intentionally. Um, but it was that feeling of um like why are you trying to make somebody else feel bad? I think it's that facade of this gives this feeling of I'm in control, or this feeling of that I'm right, or that I'm a leader or whatever, and it's just not there. So my kids, when they grew up, if they wanted to play sport, I let them play sport. And I tried to say, okay, if we do this, if we pay this fee and you agree to be on this team, then you need to show up.
Yeah.
That was what it was. But as all kids do, at some point they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so we talked about commitment to other people, and people are waiting on you, that kind of thing. And so basically neither one of my kids are very competitive. Not in sports. They're competitive in other things, but not in sports. And and I experienced this too when I was growing up. It's really interesting when you're playing it could be a sport, could be anything else. When you're doing something with somebody who is competitive, even if it's meant to be fun, if you don't care about the competition the way that they care about it, it actually makes that person really angry, usually. Okay. And I actually learned this really hardcore with my older sister, because I realized that if the only way to win with her ever, whether it be a game or whatever it was, the only way to win is to not play. That's the bottom line. And so for me, I realized I don't like this enough to play it, so I'm not going to play. And it worked for me. It wasn't like I was doing it intentionally, like to make her mad, but it made her mad. And so I've just kind of seen that consistently through time, is like, yeah, if you're with somebody who really likes to be competitive and you don't care, you don't value the competition like they value it, all of a sudden then your value system is off.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, that goes down to that right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. It's not wrong to be competitive, and it's not wrong to not be competitive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just is.
Right. It just is. And it's funny how we all kind of go to this place and we think that there's a right or wrong, which I know our culture teaches us this. But one thing I noticed when I had gotten towards the end of my degree, my art degree, well, actually I would say after I went out into the regular world, and you'd talk about things like somebody would be amazed at something I made. How do you know? Da, 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 da. And you listen to the people who struggle with being creative, and it's because they have so much judgment about right or wrong as they go through the process, right? Like they'll take a step towards creativity, and then they start questioning whether what they're doing is right or it's going to get them what they want. And then they get lost in that critical judgment. And so they don't allow the energy to flow. Right. They're stopping it in its tracks. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is not in surrender.
No, it's not. And that's why the more I talk about this stuff, the more I really realize I'm convinced, even though as hard a life as it is for artists and musicians and all of that to really, I mean, it's hard for them to assimilate into the 3D. Like, musicians are often on drugs or whatever it is. Okay. But they're absolute inspired geniuses when they are in the flow and they create whatever it is that they create. And then those creations then have such an impact on so many people.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily make their life easier, but they are there. And so I think that those artistic representations that are put out in the world are really like essences of truth. If you really kind of get at it, like you're really trying to look at seeing what it is and understand it and see how it applies and how it works in the world and that kind of thing. I mean, anybody can, I think, associate with that when you think about a song.
Well, maybe that's why they use the drugs as a crutch, but get into the flow, and they don't have an appropriate tool to do that, because nobody ever taught them about surrender.
Well, okay. I personally would think that I know that there are people who do that, especially in the spiritual world. Like, let's do shrooms, let's go do ayahuasca, whatever, right? They will do that to kind of get to that place really quickly. But you really don't have to do that. Like, you can get there without doing that. And as far as the artistic world, I think some of that's like a cultural thing, but I think too, they fall in the same category as everybody else. They have repressed feelings. They have experiences they don't want to experience. And usually it's because they don't want to feel those things. But when they actually let themselves feel it and they allow the creativity to flow, I mean, look at Taylor Swift. Like, like that stuff that she writes down, that is not coming from a place of, I'm stuffing down my feelings. It's coming from a place, okay, I may have stuffed my feelings out, but now I'm going to dig them back out. And here are my feelings out on a platter, and that's what people associate. That's what they connect with, because everybody deals with that.
Right.
Send inquiries, suggestions for new discussion topics, and comments to podcast@happylioncenter.com. That's podcast@happylioncenter.com. If you found this content enjoyable or helpful, please comment, like, share, and download. Donations are appreciated and help us to produce more of similar content. Consider making a contribution at the links in the description box. Your support is greatly appreciated. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Happy Lion Center and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. None of the content provided should be considered a substitute for legal, financial, medical, psychiatric advice or as care from a certified professional.